Well, thank you, Anna, for that rousing introduction.
Yeah,
And thank you all for coming out tonight to support us on Transgender Day of Remembrance. But let's face it, girls, we just live in a world that has no place for us. Now, that's a quote from one of the episodes of Caitlyn Jenner's TV show. And it came during an episode when all the girls were having lunch together and telling dating stories and talking about their prospects of finding that one true love in their life. And that was the conclusion that they came to. Now, it hit me kind of hard, even though they were laughing and joking about it at the time, because the ultimate sadness of that, I mean, really, if these beautiful and talented young trans women can't find true love, what chance, what hope is there for me? I mean, it's ironic that after we transition, before we transition, we go through this roller coaster of emotions, and then finally we get the courage to execute a transition, and then we experience all the elation that comes from finally being right with ourselves. And then to find that the world has no place for us, it's heartbreaking. It's kind of like going through all the time and the effort and the money that it takes to get a doctorate degree and graduating and finding out that the only jobs available to you is a truck driver. Or all these kids that spend a year in a war zone and then come home and find that they no longer fit in at home. Well, I mean, maybe I'm being a little melodramatic here, because those are real problems experienced by real people. And mine and transgender women's in general are just the consequences that we get from the decision that we made to be transgender. Well, of course, we know that the truth is that you don't just decide to be transgender. It's not a choice. The only choice any trans person makes is at what point in our lives we can no longer continue to pretend to be someone that we're not. Of course, I made the choice to stop my personal charade and to live the rest of my life as honestly as I could and be myself. So really, am I really being a drama queen by complaining so loudly? Or maybe is it that I'm not complaining loudly enough? Because after all of the fear that we as transgender people face up to transition, to transform ourselves into the correct personification of who we really are, and after bringing out and exposing all the tenderest and most intimate parts of ourselves and bringing them out of hiding and repression, exposing what we know is our true inner beauty to the rest of the world, and then to find out that we're just stigmatized, worthy of only emptiness and scorn, it's devastating. And far worse than that, for all of these girls that we're here to honor tonight, it was deadly. We hope against hope that we will find someone who will love us for who we really are, dreaming that there will be a Prince Charming. But for these girls, and for certainly far too many of us, that fairy tale is nothing but a slasher movie. Of course, I assume that after I transitioned, I have to endure a certain amount of disrespect. I mean, I was old enough to realize that the world was a real place and what I was letting myself in for, or at least I thought I did. What I really did not expect was to find that in this world, a world in which we are so defined by and so dependent on our partners in life, to find that I am now stuck in a world that has no place for me. It seemed unthinkable. To find that I'm existing in a world that excludes me from participation in the most basic of human needs was unthinkable. And yet, it is a world that has begun to sort of tolerate us. Maybe it tolerates not exactly the right word, but people in general do treat us these days with a kind of a friendly indifference with a little bit of curiosity mixed in, but no more than that. while that is a vast improvement from just 25 years ago, we do still carry a goddamn stigma when it comes to love, leaving that ever-elusive butterfly of love, that brass ring of happiness, just out of reach. It's a stigma that's so powerful that even for girls whose transition results in the essence of feminine loveliness, all they find is the same thing that these women that we're here to honor tonight found in the dating world, and that's rudeness, crassness, and violence. The fact is, most of us transition with a deep-seated belief that it is our transition that will enable us to finally find that true love. I always felt that the reason I never found true love in my life was that I was never really true to myself. But now to find out that after I transition, it's because I transition that there'll be no one waiting at the end of my rainbow, it's devastating. It's a catch-22, if there ever was one. Most people, most of you listening to me now, will freely and openly have what is in reality a more serious relationship with a cat or a dog, a different species, mind you, than to have a serious relationship with a transgender person. Of course, that some of us do overcome this stigma. They simply keep it a secret. Those girls that pass so well that they never have to tell anybody, and it's called going stealth. And it means that you leave your past behind and start a totally new life in which you never tell anyone enough about your real past to allow them to figure out who you are. The problem with that is that once again, they have to live with a fear, constant fear that at any moment they could be outed and their world, the world in which they just tried so hard to recreate themselves, that will vanish, often to a violent end. Plenty of men are known to go a little crazy when they find out that the relationship that they're in, that the woman that they love and sleep with was born a male. Most of the murders of trans women, most of these women were murdered because some man could not deal with the fact that someone might find out that he's having sex with a trans woman. So, what is the lesson here? Well, for me, I'm not giving up on trying to find someone to be a couple with, but my story is not over yet. What we're really here for is the broader sense, the sense of our entire trans community fitting in to the community at large. Even though we've come a long way towards acceptance and equality, we still have so far to go. This stigma, the stigma that we as trans people are marked with, is it erasable? Can we wash it off with soap and water? If it were only that easy. If it is erasable, it's more likely with a lot of education, a lot more public visibility by girls like us, and a lot more patience. But what if it's not? What if that stigma is something deeper and darker and something far more institutional? Something that turns seemingly normal men into maniacal killers. What if it's a stigma that can never be erased? What then? In much of the world today, we can be openly hunted down and killed as if for sport. Our current administration has declared open season on the entire LGBT community. And it is the first time in any of our lifetimes that hard-won civil rights have been rolled back. And for what? To throw a political bone to the morally bankrupt and contemptible religious lunatics? Their rationale that our existence is somehow an infringement on their right to practice some bogus religion is patently absurd. This is the kind of government permission and encouragement of open discrimination against a community that is already vulnerable to violent attacks that only emboldens, promotes, and encourages the kind of violence that we're here to try and put a stop to tonight. It's quite the opposite of the kind of protection that good government is supposed to provide its minorities. We spend billions of dollars and thousands of lives fighting Middle Eastern religious radicals, and then this administration turns around and bows down to American religious radicals. Well, hopefully, we are still in an America that has checks and balances, and they will limit this tyrant's ability to have us killed. After all, we are the red-headed stepchildren of America. While we're part of the family, we're more tolerated than loved. And I suppose that means I can still be Cinderella, still hoping that there will be a ball in my future, and wondering if Prince Charming is really going to be tall enough. But of course, even Cinderella needed a little magic to put her life right. So tell me, do we have any fairy godmothers in the audience tonight? Because we need you desperately. Won't you please help us? We would now like to read the names of the girls killed here in America. There were 24 in the last year. And we're going to light a candle for each one of them and ring a bell and have a brief moment of silence. You ready? Krista Lee Steele Knutsling.
What I'll do is I'll place them around by everybody. So we'll start at this end. And get first candle up.
We'll help you take it out.
Krista Lee was 42. She was found dead in her home on January 5th in North Adams, Massachusetts. She organized and produced the Miss Trans New England and other pageants. And she was loved and known by many in both the local and national trans community. Vicky Gutierrez. A transgender woman from Honduras, and was stabbed and had her body set ablaze inside her Los Angeles home on January 10th. Friends describe her as a young trans Latina immigrant woman whose warm smile would give anyone comfort. Celine Walker. Celine Walker, 36 years old, was fatally shot in a hotel room on February 4th in Jacksonville, Florida. It was not known for several days that Walker was trans because the local police claimed to not refer to victims as transgender. Investigators are still looking for a suspect in her death. Tanya Harvey. Tanya Harvey, 35, was fatally shot on February 6th in Buffalo, New York. A friend of Harvey's expressed her condolences on Facebook, saying, "I knew her since I started transitioning, and she was so sweet and loving." Police have confirmed that they are looking into the incident as a possible hate crime. Zachariah Fry. Zachariah Fry was 28. She went missing in New Mexico in mid-January, and her body was later found 40 miles outside of Albuquerque on February 19th. Albuquerque police arrested and charged Charles Spies with two open counts of murder. Fry's loved ones shared condolences on Facebook with one friend saying, "You were my older sister, you took care of me, and you loved me like family. I will forever love you." Felicia Mitchell. Felicia Mitchell, 45, was shot and killed outside her home on February 23rd in Cleveland. On April 10th, the Cleveland.com reported that a warrant has been issued for the arrest of Gary Sanders. Sanders was charged with aggravated murder in Mitchell's death. Her longtime partner, Shane Mitchell, described her as funny and kind and that everyone loved her. Amia Tyree Berryman. That was Amia. Amia Berryman, 28, was fatally shot at the local motel on March 26th in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Few details are known about the crime, and police report they have no suspects or persons of interest. Sasha Wall. Sasha Wall, 29, a transgender woman of color, was fatally shot on April 1st in Chesterfield County, South Carolina. The FBI is assisting with local investigators and are analyzing phone records and collecting DNA evidence. Donovan Dunlop, a friend of Wall's, expressed condolences on Facebook, writing, "I will miss you, my beautiful sister. I cannot sleep. I hope they find who did this."
Yeah. Gotta wet those whistles.
Carla Patricia Flores Pavon. Carla Flores Pavon, 26, was found choked to death in her apartment in Dallas, Texas on May 9th. Dallas police arrested 24-year-old Jimmy Eugene Johnson III on May 17th, charging him with Miss Flores Pavon's murder. It hurts a lot. You were a good-hearted person, sister. Fly high. We will remember you with love. Your beautiful smile will stay with us. Nino Fortenson. Nino Fortenson was 36 years old, fatally shot in Atlanta on May 13th. City police were nearby executing a traffic stop and rushed to the scene, but Fortenson later died at the hospital. Gigi Pierce. Gigi Pierce, 28 years old, was fatally shot on May 21st in Portland, Oregon. When officers arrived, they tried to administer aid, but Pierce died on the scene. Police investigators say that they believe that Pierce was shot during an altercation with Sophie Adler, who has been charged with Pierce's murder. Antosh English. Antosh English, 38, was fatally injured in a drive-by shooting in Jacksonville, Florida on June 1st. On her Facebook page, English described herself as an independent transgender woman who thrives on being the best person she can be. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office has declared an active murder investigation and asks anyone with information to contact their office. Diamond Stevens. Diamond Stevens, 39, was found shot to death on June 18th in Meridian, Mississippi. In interviews with a local television station, family members said that Stevens had an incredible personality. As is too often the case in the reporting of anti-transgender violence, Stevens was originally misgendered in local police statements and media reports, which delayed the awareness of this deadly incident. Catalina Christina James. Catalina James, 24, was fatally shot in Jacksonville, Florida on June 24th. In an interview with First Coast News, James's mother described her daughter as having had a big and bold personality, saying that she loved to dance and travel. James is the third transgender woman murdered and the fourth shot in Florida, in that Florida city this year. Keisha Wells. Keisha Wells, 54, was found dead with a gunshot wound to her abdomen in the parking lot of an apartment complex on June 24th, according to Cleveland.com. A longtime friend of Wells described her as the nicest person ever, but also a tough cookie. Sasha Garden. Sasha Garden, 27, was found dead with signs of trauma in Orlando, Florida, early July 19th. Originally from Wisconsin, Garden is remembered by loved ones as a firecracker who didn't hold anything back. Friend and local transgender activist Mulan Montrese Williams recalls that Garden was a talented and aspiring hairstylist and had been saving money to fund her transition. Vantisha Bell. Vantisha Bell was 18 and she was fatally shot on August 30th in a neighborhood of Shreveport, Louisiana. The Louisiana Trans Advocates Association released a statement condemning the shooting and calling the city's leaders to help curb the violence against the trans community. Dejanay Stanton. Dejanay Stanton was 24 and found with a fatal gunshot wound to the head on August 30th. After an autopsy, her death was ruled a homicide and the investigation is ongoing. Every time you ever saw her, she had a smile on her face, said the executive director of the Brave Space Alliance. She was just trying to live her life, her best life as a young girl. Shanti Tucker. Shanti Tucker, 30 years old, was found with a fatal gunshot wound in the back in Philadelphia on September 5th. Friends and family honored her life and mourned her death on Facebook, recalling that she was like another big sister to them and remembering her beautiful spirit and fun aura. London Moore. London Moore was 20 years old. She was found dead of multiple gunshot wounds in a remote area of Northport, Florida. On September 8th, Moore is remembered by her family and other loved ones who described her as hilarious and someone who made everyone laugh all the time. Nikki Enriquez. Nikki Enriquez was 28. She was one of 4 women killed in September in what local officials described as a serial killing spree, allegedly carried out by an intel supervisor for the U.S. Border Patrol. Enriquez, who also went by the name Janelle, is survived by numerous loved ones that were sad and in disbelief at her death. Cousin Veronica Castillo described her as a very outgoing person who loved to party and was beloved by the local LGBTQ community. Sierra Minaj Carter Frazier. Sierra was 31 when she was fatally stabbed and her body left behind in an abandoned building by a man with whom she was arguing on October 3rd in Chicago. As reported in the Sun-Times, Chicago police declared Frazier's death a homicide after appearing on the scene. She is remembered by friends and loved ones who said that she will always be missed. Now, in addition to the cases above, the Human Rights Council is deeply concerned about 2 other incidents which they are following very closely. On May 25th, Roxana Hernandez passed away while in the custody of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials after fleeing the violence and discrimination in Honduras. And on July 19th, 30-year-old Jesse Sumlar was found stabbed to death in Jacksonville, Florida. According to loved ones, Sumlar regularly performed in drag and identified as queer. In both of these instances, the Human Rights Council calls for further investigation into the causes of their deaths, including whether discriminatory bias towards transgender and or gender nonconforming people played a motivating factor.
I'll give him a ring.
She was killed in custody of ICE officials. That's unacceptable. They're all unacceptable. Anyway, thank you all for being so indulgent and taking part in our ceremony. So thank you very much.
Yay.